Burnice is finally here to unleash her flames of disorder, but where does she fit in, and is she worth pulling for? Hello citizens, I've been playing Burnice a lot this past week, and I'm excited to share my findings. In this video, I will cover everything from her pros and cons to team comps and builds. As usual, footage in this video comes from the Creator Experience server, and there might be changes on the live version, but I will pin a comment if there are any adjustments. Burnice is our first S Rank Anomaly character who can dish out damage and apply Anomaly off-field. She is super fun to play and to look at. However, I don't think she is on par with Ellen during release or Jane, as she is more of a sub DPS and disorder support versus a main DPS who can instantly elevate your damage and gameplay experience. Pros: Burnice is super cute and you can immediately use her to walk around the city. She is a core unit on disorder teams. I specifically say disorder and not anomaly teams, since I don't believe all anomaly teams need disorder to shine. The Assault Jane team, for example, is already very strong and would prefer another assault unit versus Burnice. Burnice also has a short on-field rotation. You usually start with her whole basic to apply the Scorch status to surrounding enemies, and then you can swap off to your other DPS. After, whenever her nitro gauge runs low or you want some more burn application, you can take her out for a quick refill plus burst damage. Her ultimate also lets you quick assist onto the next agent while she continues to deal damage. And lastly, Burnice makes Piper surprisingly viable. As for the cons, Burnice is not a main on-field DPS because her afterburn only procs when another agent attacks. Even at AM6, she performs best as a quick swap DPS. So you will need Burnice plus one other anomaly unit for a strong team. Burnice's damage is also split almost 50-50 between critable damage and non-critable damage. As a dual scaler, she's more difficult to build because you'll have to balance AP, attack percent, crit rate, and crit damage to maximize her damage output. This leads to less overall damage compared to characters who mainly scale with AP or crit. Burnice also has a field gauge you'll want to keep track of to make sure you don't run out. In the beginning, it's really easy to keep attacking without realizing she already has no fuel. Also, since Burnice applies off-field fire attribute, it can make it difficult to keep track of all your attribute anomaly gauges, since it only shows the most recently applied attribute. I hope the devs will optimize this in the future patches. In terms of teams, I tested these variations of Burnice teams in both Shiyu Defense and versus this weekly boss, to get a feel for her rotation, damage, and clear times. To no one's surprise, the best team is currently the all-limited S-Rank team, Burnice, Jane, and Caesar. Caesar's shield makes this team very comfy, and Burnice's off-field fire application along with her quick EX both adds to the team damage and also lets Jane proc disorder consistently. Both Jane and Burnice's ultimates are also very strong, function similarly, so you can choose between which one you want to use based on the situation. In the future, you'll be able to use both. For those who have Jane and Caesar already, while slotting in Burnice as the third will definitely increase your team damage, I wouldn't say it's a significant upgrade, so I don't recommend pulling Burnice specifically for Jane unless you really like Burnice or plan to invest into more anomaly teams in the future. One team where I felt like Burnice was a significant upgrade was the Burnice plus Piper team. With Caesar, Piper no longer has to worry about dying, and with Burnice applying off-field fire anomaly, Piper and Burnice can trigger back-to-back disorders, and Piper's AoE spin is nice for wiping out groups of enemies. For those without Caesar, Lucy also works, but the gameplay experience will be a bit worse, especially on the Piper team since you can take a lot of damage during her spins. As for the Grace plus Burnice variation, I initially thought this team would perform better, but after extensive testing, the team honestly felt weaker than Burnice plus Piper. While this team can perform decently, you have to really work for it and it doesn't feel very strong. Grace doesn't have a rewarding dodge counter to deal with the newer aggressive enemies. She takes a while to build Anomaly, and the team is more reliant on having Arena to extend the duration of Grace's shock. If you think about it though, given our next limited S-Rank character is Yanagi, it kind of makes sense. I suspect Yanagi will fix a lot of Grace's current weaknesses, and Yanagi x Burnice might be the next OP team. I also tried out Burnice, Soldier 11, and Lucy. I was curious if Burnice's extra burn application plus her own personal damage would make Soldier 11 better. However, I feel like it was overall weaker than the previous Soldier 11 teams. This team also lacks daze buildup, and Soldier 11 really benefits from hitting stunned enemies. With a well-built Soldier 11 though, this team can perform better than Burnice plus Grace. If you're interested in this team, I recommend building a crit Burnice. So normally, this is the Burnice build I found to work best. If you don't have Burnice's W engine, which gives extra ER, I highly recommend going 2-piece ER if you find yourself running out of energy. Attack percent is also very good for Burnice, as it increases both her non-critable anomaly damage and her critable damage. For those of you planning to play Burnice with Soldier 11, here's the crit Burnice build. I found this to work better because Burnice's damage share is lower on the pure fire team due to everyone else also applying fire anomaly. In terms of Burnice's W engine and Mindscapes, Burnice's W engine is very strong, and I highly recommend pulling for it if you want to invest a bit more into her. Not only does it let her deal more damage, it also gives her much needed energy regen. Here is a rough damage comparison of the W engines. I would definitely prioritize the signature over her M1. Plus, Lucy's signature is also on the banner, and it's one of the best support W engines. So even if you don't have enough pulls to guarantee her W engine, you could do a few pulls and see if you can get a couple of copies if you're planning on using Lucy. Here are Burnice's Mindscape comparisons. I personally think just M0 R1 is really good value, and I don't recommend pulling for her Mindscapes unless you really like her. I will end this video with some TLDR of polling recommendations. Thank you for watching. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments, and remember to like and subscribe if you enjoy this content. I'll see you on stream or in my next video.